CSVs had some goals about addressing poverty, food security, and we cannot forget that. John reminded us about the question of inequities, and inequities are a big issue today. And is our CSVs different in the kind of technologies they generate? The question we need to ask ourselves, are we doing the same thing again? We think that CSVs and participatory research will generate technologies that have special relevance, not only location specific. And we're supposed to say goodbye to hunger, poverty, malnutrition, and all that. A very important question to keep in mind as we proceed in our discussion, because we promised that in CSVs. You did, right? That we're going to address those issues. Yeah, we did. So, but now we're doing this in the context of changing climate. And so we're looking at CSVs as a concept for delivering practical adaptation options. I've added nutrition to that because we have other projects dealing with nutrition and all that. So food security is more than that. Okay. Next. So location-specific research. They focus on hotspots. I think this is important. We try to put this in the distributed to you all. Multiple CSVs for different ecologies, otherwise you're not going to generate a one size fits all or one model for everyone. What we saw here, relevant to Punjab, and the special situation you have here, they had mechanization before, and the mechanization is being used to address issues of tillage, so on and so forth. So these are going to be different. So diversity is important. And the moment we try to put the risks of over-harmonization is that we cannot address the unique needs. And that's why we have CSVs, because of we are trying to address them. Now, CSVs are a platform for addressing social, political, institutional. You can't talk about scaling up if you don't talk about institutional issues. So I appreciate those group that emphasize the need to do institutional landscape studies. Okay. Yeah, so I think the issue of landscapes, that don't have to be mountains, they can be watersheds, but these landscapes influence what happens on the farm and in specific villages. And later I'll ask Yen to flash back just 2 slides from his presentation to make this point. So if you're talking about nutrient flows, if you're in the valley, you have your rice paddy there. If you have a community forest, as you do in Nepal, it influences the productivity of rice in the rice paddy down. If you have a water catchment, and so on and so forth, I don't want to go too much into this at this point. So you'll have this later, but without collective action, then you cannot address those problems on scale. So CSVs are lighthouses. I think CSVs have to be done on a certain scale that matters. If it's a farm, it may not be a scale that matters, and then we're doing on-farm research. The scale must matter. Otherwise, you cannot say it's scalable just because it works on a farm. You have to do things on scale to be able to say that you can scale out. That those of us who are looking at scaling up issues know you have to be able to do things on scale if you want to promote even further scaling up. Okay, so yeah, because of lack of time, we'll just go through this quickly. So you build adaptation capacities of farmers. You build capacities of researchers to promote CSVs. So there are different levels of capacities for different purposes, and you've highlighted that. So of course, yes, there is a technological set of options that you test that comes in at the right time, and this I don't have to say too much about. So the integrity of CSV as a research unit, as an action research site, should not be compromised. And I think this is a point I really like to make as an opening statement. If you try to do too many things in a CSV, and you lose the research part of it, all of you emphasized evidence yesterday and today, then the validity of a CSV as generating evidence-based options is lost. So for example, if you get too developmental, and you can argue with me about this, but then you lose the evidence base. So I think the concept of CSV as a research unit must be preserved, though later on I'll make some comments that suggest how CSVs can be used for scaling up. Okay, next. However, as I listen, some people are using CSVs as a scaling out mechanism. Okay, that is different from the scaling up, the way John has emphasized, PAR. You need to do PAR to generate those options. You may use CSVs to promote it widely. That's something else. Then you can call it CSVs. We don't have to define CSVs for the whole world. So different organizations have different reasons for CSVs as platforms. But so it's important, the last point, CSV proponent must clarify the role and the purpose of doing CSVs and what is their scope. Quite relevant if the Haryana government says it wants to do 500 CSVs to promote laser leveling or whatever else. So I think this is where the confusion is arising, because some of us are talking about CSVs as a conduit for scaling out, and for me it has a legitimacy of its own. If you look at FAO's definition of CSVs, and there's a lot of people doing CSVs now, but CCAFs has to keep in mind that is, I'm not saying CCAF should not be doing scaling out, and I'll get to that point later. Next. So scaling up of CSAs are directed towards landscapes, if you're talking about agroecologies, or you can talk about subnational, as our friends from Colombia were emphasizing, local governments and all that. So what is that unit? The cooperatives. So there's one might be more biophysical, agroecological, or administrative and institutional. So in the last picture, that Ian will show us that in the Southeast Asia they have a 10 kilometer by 10 kilometer grid within which is located the CSV. And it is within the CSV that baseline studies are done, VBS is done, a broader household analysis is done in the wider area. 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers is quite large. But remember, we all promised 1 million people, 500,000 people, and they twisted our arms to try to get the numbers up. So at some point we need to ask the question, how are you going to get those 500,000 people you promised in your proposal? Whatever I just said might sound like you just said the opposite. Okay. So, but CSVs generate adaptation models that can be scaled up through promotion via other entities, and that's a legitimate part of a researcher's role. Okay, so you need to understand why are we doing the CSV and who is doing the CSV. Next. So reminder, adaptation research is characterized by CSVs that help build and nurture local capacities at different levels to continue to innovate, experiment, adapt, and often the issue of incremental adaptation. That's why the fidelity of a CSV as an action research site will be lost, because if you try to do it in thousands and hundreds of CSVs. But the models that come out of that will be more socially relevant, more scalable, hopefully more cost effective, and you use it to scale up elsewhere. So the question we need to ask is, whose needs are we addressing? Our needs, producing more papers, attending more meetings, or are we also going to address the issues of that first slide? Thank you.